not encouraging or advising anyone to modify their firearms. This is for entertainment and educational purposes only. Hey, what's up, everyone? With this second double stack 1911 build, I'm including some more custom touches. The first one I already made a video about, and that was just modifying the Chile beaver tails to a profile that I liked better. This next one, I think the first double stack 1911 I noticed it on was the Fowler Vanta 9. It's just a little like reference point or memory pad for the support hand thumb on the side of the frame. I just thought it looked really cool, and I do like having a little reference point there. You could, make the vertical groove for something like this with a checkering file, but the horizontal ones wouldn't really work out. You'd end up doing the whole side of the frame here. So I just machined this whole thing. I think some of you like seeing the machining process and those details, so that's what I'm going to cover in this video. Let's get into it. Of course, I made a 3D model of the side of the frame in front of the slide stop. I use this to play with groove size, depth, and spacing. Then I made myself a drawing to reference while machining. I clamped the frame in the vise. I had to put it up on a parallel bar so that the tab for the front grip module screw cleared the top of the jaw. I used an edge finder to zero the x-axis on the leading edge of the slide stop pocket. Then I traveled to the end of the dust cover and used the edge finder again to figure out how far my first groove is from the dust cover. I recorded this measurement on my drawing. It was 3.275 inches. You can directly measure this with calipers too, but it was easy in the machine. The reason I am doing this is because I will machine the traction pad on both sides of the frame. I'm right-handed, but I want my guns to feel just as good in the hands of a lefty. There is no slide stop cutout on the other side of the frame to use as a reference, so I'm recording this measurement now, and then that will locate my first groove on the other side so the traction pads line up. I should have zeroed my y-axis with the edge finder at this point, but I didn't. I installed my end mill and zeroed my z-axis. I'm using a 4-flute 16th inch center cutting uncoated carbide ball end mill to machine the grooves. I set the spindle speed at its maximum, which is 3000 RPM on the machine that I'm using. I machined the first groove. I went slow to get a feel for how it was cutting. I did this in 3 passes, about 10 thou each, to get to my 31 thou or 1/32 of an inch depth. It was cutting good. I kept it brushed down with a little lube and cleared chips. I machined the rest of the grooves to full depth in one pass and just fed it a little bit slower. These tiny little end mills are fragile and you got to be careful so you don't twig them off. The grooves are on a 72 thousandths center spacing. I had planned to go one more vertical groove towards the dust cover to get it to kind of line up with this edge right here, but once I cut these, I thought it looked pretty good, and it might look a little bit weird if the forward groove was kind of coming into this taper right here. So I just made note of that on my drawing. I always start with my best guess of how I'll machine something when I make my 3D model and drawing. Designing for manufacturing, if you will, right? Whenever I'm designing and making drawings for myself to machine, I have to be really aware of the capabilities of the machine I'm using and also my skill level. But then, when I actually do it, things change and I adjust my plans as needed. And then I take notes on my drawing so I can go back and update it for future use. When I had the edge finder installed, I should have zeroed my y-axis on the top of the frame, but I forgot. So I just touched off my end mill on the frame with a piece of paper, dialed 3 thou for the thickness of the paper, and then dialed half my tool diameter and zeroed there. I cut the horizontal lines. On my x-axis, I was traveling back and forth between 0 and 0.576, which is the center of my forwardmost vertical groove. I could cut the horizontal lines quicker because they were only taking off the little peaks left between the vertical grooves. I removed the burrs, kicked up between projections with a wire brush, and good lord, this was a grippy little pad. I used sandpaper and a needle file to break edges and mellow it out a little bit. It was still tacky and grippy, but of course I don't want any sharp edges that are going to cut my fingers up. I put the frame back in the vise, used my measurement from the dust cover to zero my x-axis. I zeroed my y-axis on top of the frame this time with the edge finder. I installed my end mill and zeroed my z-axis. I machined the vertical and horizontal grooves in the same manner as the other side. When I was done, I did the same hand cleanup. I was media blasting all my parts to prep for finishing that day as well. I expected the media blasting to mellow out the traction pad a little, but it really didn't. I used pretty fine media. So next time, I think I'm going to cut the grooves 20 thou deep instead of a 30-second deep. This will leave a little bit bigger of a flat spot on top of those pyramids, and maybe it'll mellow them out a little bit. I'm not really trying to use this as like a gas pedal to like wrench down on the muzzle. It's just a reminder where to put my support hand thumb for grip consistency. Anyways, I think this looks awesome. It feels good. I'm really pleased with it, and I think I will be carrying it forward onto, you know, my future builds. I thought it would be cool to like extend this checkering pattern along this part of the pick rail, and then maybe like up and integrate it into some slide serrations. Who knows? There's a lot of options. As I get more comfortable with these machining processes, I can be more creative with my designs. As always, I hope this was interesting or informative to you in some way. Thanks for watching. I'll catch you next time.